Right, hello again, I'm back. The reason I'm making a little video today is just another little bit of work on the Velocette. I've been playing around with jets on the Carb, and I just need to strip it down and put it in the ultrasound and make sure that the pilot circuitry is all clear. I've been experimenting with pilot circuit jets, and I'm not entirely happy. And as you probably all know, most of this unleaded petrol has a tendency to dry up and can block all sorts of galleries. Well, this shows the adapter which I made, the narrow, small pitch circle diameter stud center line, and then the bigger flange and the wider PCD. So I'll show you that in greater detail when I take it all apart. Stand by. Right, as you can see, I've still got the pipes attached to this float chamber. Many years ago I seem to have picked up a nice little tool for this. This might be an official AML service tool. I don't recall where I got it, but it's obviously pretty handy. Essentially, you remove the float chamber. You don't have to take the pipes and the filter off, although I will at some stage, just to check and clean everything. And that should come off nicely. Right. In actual fact, that looks nice and clean in there, but very little garbage. Right, I'm just going to unscrew this pilot setting. 1.5 1 1/4. Okay, 1 1/4 turns. Not what you'd call a spectator sport. It just sits there fizzing away, and what I'm going to do now is go and have a cup of tea. So, well, the fluid is getting a little bit dirty, and I think the casing of the carburetor is looking a little bit cleaner. Right, this just gives you an idea of the torrent of fluid that should come out of two small jets, one either side of where the skirt of the slide comes down. I wonder if I can get better lighting on that. Well, maybe I can if I do it that way. Yeah, that would work a bit better. And here we have the last little gallery where the needle jet screws in. I've plugged the end of this with a small child's paintbrush. It's a convenient taper shape that'll block that. So you should be able to see some of the brake cleaner come out where the pilot screw comes in. And I'll put my hand up here to block these two holes in the venturi. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Everything is clean and clear. So I'm happy with that. Alright, this shows a blast coming up through the pilot adjuster screw. This just gives an indication of something which I was surprised to find. The original carb parts on the left look like they are two-stroke main jet holder and so on, whereas I've just bought a new main jet holder, and I've also bought a new little spray bar for the bottom of the venturi, which is cylindrical in shape as against the sloping shape which is in the carb. This just gives you an idea of the spray bar. The sloping one goes with the rest of the two-stroke stuff. Fortunately, I've managed to, more by luck than by judgment all those years ago, I've managed to get a 4-stroke pilot jet. So I've replaced it all the same. So this is all going to have a full set of 4-stroke bits and pieces in it. Never, just goes to show that, however, no matter how long you've been doing things and playing around with things, you can always learn something new. Well, this is the original carburetor that I got with the bike. In fact, it has a very small choke size. I think it's 1 1/16. So I decided I wasn't even going to bother restoring that. And this is the carburetor I use. It's a 1034 34mm, pretty well equivalent to the 1 3/8 diameter. But as you can see, there's quite a difference between the flange sizes. So I had to make up an adapter. This gives you a shot of the new float. This, I believe, is one of the old floats, which I think is susceptible to damage from ethanol. This is what's known as the stay-up float, which apparently is claimed to be ethanol proof. I think the indicator is that it's made of it's black. And instead of having everything, all the pivots and the interface with the needle made in plastic, this has actually got something made in stainless steel, which means you can adjust the float level without moving the float seat and the float valve. So I set this up so that the valve, when it's closed, the float valve, the float itself, is just below the level of the flange. I'll try and set this up so I can give you an indication of that. I like to have as much petrol in the float bowl as possible without the risk of the float coming up so hard that it actually hits the main body of the carburetor. And once I've got plenty of petrol, then I'll adjust the jets to suit. You can see it there, but I have about a millimeter between the edge of the float, or the top surface of the float, and the flange of the float bowl. Right, the positioning of the spring, the little round clip, and then the actual spring clip which locates the needle, that's just a little bit fiddly and a little bit tiresome, but you just got to do it. What I did is I compressed the spring and gripped the cable lightly with a pointy nose pliers, and that kept the spring compressed while I fished around with the end of the cable and lined everything up. It was very difficult to photograph, and there's the end of the nipple there, as you can see. So the only issue now really is just to put all this back together. In the past, I have found that as I tighten these screws, it can distort the bore ever so slightly, and it can become a little bit difficult. Hang on, let me just put these screws down somewhere safe. Right. So if I put this in, there's the cutaway, so that tells me it goes in that way. There it is there. So obviously there's a couple of things I need to adjust when I put all this and get the bike running. I need to, and if I just open the throttle a little bit, that'll sit down there nicely. Well, there you are. Nice crisp closure, and these Allen bolts up here are nice and tight. There's no binding. The slide is going up and down. You really need to have confidence that the slide is going to shut, because if it sort of jams up or gets tight when you're running, Jesus, you could have a runaway, and that could be a bit tiresome. So anyway, I'm happy with that. I just need to adjust the pilot circuitry and the tick over once I start it up again. Right, I just want to make a final comment on the carburetor before I move on to jacking lumps out of the fuel tank. There's two needles here. One of them is made of aluminium and the other is made of brass. If you can imagine a needle that was immensely heavy, it would just pull down anyway, and it might even override the float tendency to float on the petrol. So what you really need to make this very sensitive to float level is to have the lightest needle that you can get, which is what this aluminium one offers. The brass one obviously is a little bit, brass is being denser and heavier than aluminium. So the aluminium one is the one I'm rebuilding with, and that just gives a little bit more sensitivity so that you can get a better control over the actual petrol level in the float chamber. Right, this shows you the tank upside down, mounted in the vise on the front mounting, and tools of destruction all laid out here. I've got the angle grinder. I'm going to use that so far as I have the depth range. If I had a 9-inch angle grinder, it might make this cut a bit easier, but I shall just play around with the blade that I have. Basically I need to chop out this piece, and because this is where the carburetor is going to go, I also need to move this mounting and reattach it up here. Oh, this is working slowly. Nearly there. Well, rusty, but not too rusty. Also interesting to see the way this thing is constructed. It's got the main shell, the floor, and then some side pieces which give the cylinder head clearance. Anyway, that's sound enough. I can work with that. I'm just going to measure this up. Just 50 thou. Let me check that again. Probably a bit of rust and paint and stuff. Call that 40 something. 45. And look at this part here. I think the base of it is a little bit thicker. Rust and shit on it. I'm pushing 50. And then the actual side skin. I've actually cleaned this up a little bit. So there's that comes out at about 50 thou. So this thing throughout is about 50 thou. And I have a lump of garbage here I just bought from the scrapyard. Let me just do a little check on that. And there you are, 50 thou again. So even though this is galvanized, I'll scuff that off. It'll burn off anyway with the welding. So I'll do a little bit of cardboard templating now, and then I'll transfer the cardboard template onto this and chop this out, and then just bend it up and stick it in there and see how it all looks. Well, in the best traditions of CAD, that's cardboard assisted design, I've cut out some templates here, and I've got 2 bits of steel. That's just going to get welded in there. And then this piece here will be sat in there, and that'll all work. I'll be able to stick that together, and then once I've got that done, I shall pressure test the tank and check for leaks, and then I shall strip the whole tank down, paint, and probably any isopolymer or any body filler that's plastered into the top part of it. And then I shall see about derusting it and dealing with anything that is exposed once all the paint is gone. And then I shall simply repaint it. I've still got I've got to replace this mounting. I'll probably put that on down there and come up at this angle with a little bit of a scoop so that it misses the carburetor. But anyway, I've done all that before, so it's achievable. Right, that's about it. Right, that seems to be working. I've got the wire feed and the volts and the amp set rightly. Right, here we go again. Slight change in the way the tank is positioned, so I can get in there and weld along that seam, and then I'll go around the back. I've had to batter this with the hammer to try and, because this obviously distorted a little bit and pulled the thing away as this weld contracted. But there's a small enough gap there now for me to manage this okay. Right, as you can see, this is a bit of a mess, but what I've done is I've mixed up some soapy water with a small paintbrush, and I've just been slopping this all over wherever there's been a joint. I put a little bit of solder here, having sort of structurally welded this mounting that I had to replace. As you can see, I've got a large gap here now. And there are no little bubbles, believe me. When there are holes, the little bit of soapy water and the child's paintbrush, they show up very easily. And then you can either put another bit of weld in, or maybe if you're happy with the structural strength, then you can just feed in a little bit of solder. That's done rather crudely with the blow lamp and some baker's flux. And that's about it. So the next job, as you can see, some of this paint is a dreadful mess. But I'm going to stop the video now, because really there is no point in droning on watching paint dry. I've got to strip all this off, remove any of the old body filler that's there, and then redo that, blend in bits and pieces like that, and make it good, and then put some paint on it. That'll be another painting session in the garden perhaps. So anyway, I hope to use some 2-pack epoxy type paint, which will be good and resilient. Anyway, that's enough for now, but clearly this mess is not going to stay this way. I've got to continue, so there'll probably be another video. All the best. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.